In this video, I'll be talking about how to master the basics of learning Japanese in 30 days. And I'll be sharing with you my strategies and my experience of learning the language and also build the foundation for Japanese for future. I'll be also sharing with you how to break down the study schedule, how much time you will need, and what needs to be done in order to master the basics in 30 days. Before we get started, just to share my experience, I am a foreigner living in Tokyo, Japan for almost 6 years. I have passed JLPT N1 in 2021, and I have also experienced working in a Japanese company. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing is, before learning any language, you need to have your study schedule and also have the expectation setting. And think about how much time you're going to be able to learn the language and also invest in this language. You also have to be 100% honest with yourself, because you might be working, you might be studying something else, or you might be busy with your life, or you don't have a lot of time during even the weekends. So if you're able to spend around 12 to 15 hours per week, you should be able to master most of the basics in Japanese language. I would say even covering almost everything for N5 in JLPT. My experience is that out of that 12 to 15 hours, if you can even it out during different days of the week, that would be the best. For example, I would usually spend around 1 to 2 hours per day, and then on the weekend I'm relatively more free, then I can spend maybe 3 to 4 hours just to practice and do some exercise on the book. So in that case, you're not cramming everything into one day, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to digest the information you just learned. Be honest with yourself. How much do you want to learn in the 30 days? Not everyone wants to learn everything in 30 days. You might have more time, so you can maybe even it out, like maybe 2 months you want to master it, or you don't have a lot of time and you want to make sure that you have your basics within 30 days. So everyone's study plan and study schedule can be very different. So what would be your goal that you want to achieve at the end of the 30 days? Who doesn't have a lot of experience with Japanese, there are 3 types of alphabets. And at this point, you don't want to mess with kanji that much, so you can come back to it a little bit later. So I'll really focus on learning hiragana and katakana. The reason why you don't want to study kanji at this point is that everything in kanji in Japanese can be written out in hiragana. So at this point, what you want to do is you want to get familiarized with the alphabet system, because everything can be expressed in either hiragana or katakana. And also because kanjis are basically Chinese characters that the Japanese language adopted from the Chinese system, and they can be very complicated to learn, complicated to write. So at this point, I would really just learn the hiragana and katakana first and then come back to it later. So there are a lot of resources online where you can learn to study hiragana and katakana, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'll put it in the description below. But what you need to do is you need to be able to write, you need to be able to read it, and also you need to reach a point where you hear the hiragana or katakana, you'll be able to write it down. So what I did when I was studying it is that I would have a little dictation. So I'll put the katakana or hiragana just randomly on and see if I can just hear it and be able to write it down. And in my experience, if you're able to put down around 8 to 10 hours to study it, you should be able to master it, and then you can move on to the next stage. So before going to the next stage, I would have a phase called immersion. And this is very important for you to learn any language, because you need to get used to the accents, you need to get used to how people deliver and how they sound. So lucky for you, there's a lot of resources online for Japanese. If you're into it, put on a few animes, see how the people sound like and intonation. Try to find something to watch and practice your ear. So when I was learning Japanese for the first time, I would always put on a show called Crayon Shinjan. It's a very funny and short anime cartoon that you can learn more about Japanese people's daily life, as well as learning some very daily life Japanese in that show. So I would watch it like 8 minutes, 10 minutes every day, and just to get used to learning the language and just get more motivated in learning Japanese. When you're doing the immersion, try to learn how they pronounce their words and observe how they speak. In the book How to Learn a Foreign Language, one of the most important things is you learn things by shadowing how native speakers speak, and also getting used to the speed that they use in a daily setting. So put on some anime, put on some TV show in Japanese, and really immerse yourself in Japanese. Another good resource I would use is the NHK Japanese News for new Japanese learners. They have it in Japanese, so you can hear, you can adjust the speed, and you can hear how Japanese sound like. And also they have translation in English as well, so you can really get used to the way that people speak and really take it from there. So once you have your daily immersion, you can start picking up some basic words. In order to be able to master the basics of Japanese, I would recommend somewhere around 800 to 1,000 words in Japanese. I put some resources in the description below so you can have a look. Again, on this stage, I wouldn't really be putting too much focus on kanji, and the only kanjis I would recommend you to study would be the kanjis used for verbs. For example, to walk, to drink, to eat, and these verbs they usually use a kanji to express. So what I would do is I would pick around 50 to 80 words in kanji for verbs, and I'll study those, and usually their writing is not too complicated. And the more important thing is you need to get used to the 1,000 words in hiragana. And lucky for English speakers, because a lot of the Japanese words written in katakana, they are from English. For example, ice cream is ice cream, or sometimes just ice. And television, TV would be written now in katakana as terebi. So a lot of these words you don't really need to study that much because they sound English, and once you get used to writing in katakana, you'll be able to recognize that, okay, this is an English word. So there's around 20% of those words in the basic 1,000 words. The other words you really have to study. So my technique in here is that I'm a little bit old school. I really like flashcards. So I just make a bunch of different flashcards. One side I write down the Japanese hiragana, and if you think you want to learn a little bit more kanji, you can also write down the kanji as well. And at the back, you have your English translation. What I do on this stage is that I'll see the English word and I'll think about what is the Japanese sound for that word, and I'll just write it down. Again, it's a little bit of a dictation. It's not the most fun learning process in here, but this will really help you to cram a lot of different vocabularies within a very short period of time. And the reason why I like writing flashcards is that by writing it down, it actually helps you to remember that word. But some people don't like writing it. You can also use a flashcard app. The flashcard app that I used to use to study for my JLPT is called Anki, and I think it's very popular among Japanese learners. It's very convenient. You can just learn things on the go, on your phone, on the train. You can just like do a lot of flashcards, so that works too. So depending on your study style, you can choose which one works best for you. But again, my recommendation is by the end, you should be able to see an English word and think in hiragana for that word in Japanese. So next, grammar. So in my experience, what I did was that I bought a textbook for N5. Just bear in mind that grammar in Japanese is not as hard as you imagine. Most of the Japanese sentences follow a very standard structure. So the more you learn Japanese, the more pattern that you see in those structures. But the thing is, the more you learn it actually gets more complicated because there is something called keigo. And keigo is the formal form of Japanese. And again, on this stage, don't worry too much about it. Try to master the basics of how people communicate on their day-to-day life, because when friends talk to each other, they're not going to be using very formal sentence structure and whatnot. So mastering the basic simple sentence structure is very crucial here. So the book that I recommend to use would be Nihongo Fun and Easy. So I'll put the link down as well. A lot of people who went to like a Japanese language school or Japanese class, they use Minano Japanese. So I don't really like using that book because I find it a little bit boring and is really just the textbook style of studying. But this book that I use, there are a lot of different examples in a more fun way. And if you're studying with another person, there is a session you can practice in a role play setting with your partner with the sentence structure that you just learned. So I really like that part as well. If you don't have a partner to study with you, you can always try to just kind of talking to yourself. So there are two series to this book. There's Fun and Easy Nihongo, and there's Fun and Easy Nihongo 2, Basic Grammar. So as a new learner to the language, you want to familiarize yourself with the grammar. I would pick the second one first just to cover yourself with the basic grammars. But if you're not using that book, you can also find a lot of resources online to teach you the first 100 sentence pattern online. So I'm going to put some links in my description as well. But there are a few things that you need to be aware of when you're studying those grammars. So first is you need to know all of the pronouns, how to address somebody with their pronouns. Second, you need to know past tense and future tense. This is the basis of you expressing yourself in the timeline to describe things. So that's very, very important. Also, getting used to how to use ha or ga, because almost all sentences in Japanese would have ha or ga. We don't really have that concept in English. Even a advanced level Japanese learner, they mess up ha and ga all the time. You want to make sure that you learn it properly right off the bat so it doesn't come back and haunt you later. Another one is question. How do you formulate a question using Japanese words? And the last one is receiving and giving. How do you say it in Japanese? And also the last thing is possessive form. How do you say this is mine, this is hers, this is my pen? Again, these are very basic, but if you don't get it right in the beginning, when you're studying further down, you may get confused very easily. So get it right in the beginning. And after you study everything that I mentioned, the most important thing is practice, practice, and practice. And the reason why I'm saying it is because a lot of people just read through a lot of grammar points, they just read through all the words and think that they actually study it. But that is not the case until you have your active output when you're studying. That being said, you need to have a lot of practice exercises. What I do is that for fun and Nihongo, there's a lot of exercise. I really have to do it. If something is wrong, I circle it down and come back to it and do it again to see if I actually understand that grammar point. If you have any questions about studying Japanese, feel free to ask any questions in a comment below. I will try to answer as much as I can. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.